Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I have actually made videos about aid before. I made a video about how Red Cross and UN failed Haiti and all the terrible things UN and other aid organizations did in Burkina Faso. This is something I'm actually personally familiar with because I've actually worked for international organizations that operate in Somalia. I'm not particularly proud of it, but I was younger and you do what you have to do. But in this video, I want to explain to you why aid in Somalia doesn't actually work and why I think it's more of a scam than anything else. And also I'm going to explain to you how it could be improved. But let me first show you a clip so that you can hear the reality from the Western aid workers.
Somalia gets around $2 billion a year in international aid. Unfortunately, almost half of that money ends up disappearing, unaccounted for. For security reasons, the large international organizations are grouped together near Mogadishu Airport on the seafront. Walls and razor wire surround the compounds. Around 2,000 international workers live and work inside the sprawling United Nations complex here. Up until June 2020, Justin Brady spent 8 years coordinating the UN's humanitarian aid for Somalia. Every single building is fortified to withstand heavy fire. The UN invests a large part of its budget in protecting its employees.
The first is security and access. And that's why we have one of the highest costs of doing business in the world. An armored vehicle costs much more than a soft-skin vehicle. All of my staff have protective vests and helmets. Whether they need them or not, I have to supply those. And our cost of doing business is much higher than any other place I've worked in.
Like 30, 40%?
Well, I don't want to speculate, but yeah, it's much higher.
The workers living in these privileged compounds earn at least $10,000 a month, a financial incentive for coming to work in one of the world's deadliest places. People here travel in armored cars and fly in private jets, creating high costs that eat into the aid money meant for the Somali people. Out in the field, it's hard to see where the aid goes.
$2 billion is given to Somalia in aid every year. Half of it goes missing. It's unaccounted for, so nobody knows where that goes. But then, on the money that we actually know where it's going, over 40% is spent on overhead. Now he said it's much higher than 40%. Now in the organizations I have seen, it has been more than 70%. I actually saw one organization and they were saying how successful they are, that they are spending only 70% on overhead. But let me give you an example. As you can see, this airplane brought this aid from one part of Somalia. The amount of aid provided is worth $1,000. They spent $6,000 just delivering it. What kind of organization would survive operating like this? Well, an organization that is not required to actually do anything. The only thing that matters is providing this cargo and taking picture from it so that they can get more funding. And the people who work on these organizations are from the Western world, mainly a bunch of white women. They get paid tens of thousands of dollars every month. I mean, the secretary gets paid $10,000. What do you think the director makes? The project managers, the project assistants, the accountants, all these people with fancy names, what do you think they make? There are some Somalis in the mix. Usually they are diaspora members. The local people have particular job descriptions. Now I'll tell you what they do later on. Now there are also other issues. Now here's another picture. Now usually when food is delivered, what they do is that they give the food to 10 to 20 people and then they take picture of it. And then the rest ends up in a shops like this and then sold to the people who were supposed to get this for free. Now who are the biggest loser in all of this? The local farmers and the fishermen, because now the shops aren't buying their product, they're buying aid products that are very cheap because they should be given for free. They pay a little bit of money and then they sell that to a higher price, but the price is still lower than the agricultural products that is produced locally. So it doesn't make any sense for you to farm because you're not going to get any money of it. So the farmers are destroyed. Now, when people think about aid, they think about exactly things like this, taking food to a people who need that food, giving medical aid, medical products and other things. That's what people think about. Now, when he said that 2 billion is spent on aid, what you have to understand that only fraction of it, small amount of that money actually ends up being used in some material way that actually benefits the people. A little bit of it goes to food aids like this. A little bit goes to supporting educational institutions, but that's very little. Majority of it goes into indoctrinating the local people. Majority of the money is spent on things like educating Somalis about democracy, about women's rights, about human rights, about this, about that, about a lot of the things that the Western people think are important. They believe that if they can just come and explain women's right to a bunch of women, then those women are going to rebel and they can take over the country. They think that if Somalis are educated on democracy, all the bad government is going to disappear. So they have all these seminars and events where they indoctrinate the local people. It's not about helping them. It's about telling them how great the West is. And I've been in those kind of events. People who need material help, mothers who cannot feed their children, they sat them down and then they tell them things like, your husband cannot be rude to you. I mean, I could make a whole video about some of the idiotic events I've been into. So over that 2 billion, even the billion that's counted for the programs that they actually fund are mostly very dumb. Now I have 4 things that, in my opinion, should be changed. Now I'm not saying that if you do these things will be perfect, but at least it will be a change and an improvement. Now the most important thing is that aid, especially food aid, should be given as a direct aid. Now in the Somali context, pretty much every Somali has access to a mobile phone and they can use mobile payments to pay for their products. And those that can't, we have the remittance bank system, so they can also collect money from the local banks and institutions and local shops. So everybody has an access to a place where they can register and where they can given a direct aid, basically being given money straight to their hands. This is what the Somali diaspora does. They send money back straight to the people. And the aid that the Somalis do themselves, which the Western organizations never talk about, there's actually research on it, and the money that's sent by the Somali diaspora is much more effective. There was even an article, I think earlier this month, on The Guardian, and they were saying that the aid organizations that the Somali people started that used direct aid were very effective. The people who need it get directly the money. Less corruption, less middlemen, and less overhead. The cost of sending money directly to the people is about 2%. And then the local shopkeepers, because they know people have money, they will buy products from the local farmers and from others, and then they would sell that to the people who have the money. And this would also benefit the local farmers. Another thing that has to be changed is that there has to be less organizations. Because now there are hundreds of millions of organizations. And that's actually why you know that it's about making money and not about helping people. Because if they want to help people, they would work together to minimize the cost. So there should be less organizations and the money should be given to one place. And then that one place should allocate the resources. And that one place should, in my opinion, be the government. But if you don't want to give the money to the government, you can establish an organization that gives aid to the people in Somalia. Because at the end of the day, if you want to get rid of this, you have to give the money to the local people. You have to actually support the institutions in the country. And you cannot just support them by teaching them and giving them seminars. What you actually have to do is put money into their hands and tell them, you can come up with any idea you want. Do this the way you think is the best. And see what are the ideas that the local people bring. Because the local people are more efficient. Now the final point, there has to be oversight into this. This is a wild, wild west. This is a daylight robbery. And this is giving aid a bad name. There will be a day when Somalia doesn't need aid anymore. But most likely there will always be a country and people who need it. So we have to make this better, and there has to be some sort of organization that is outside of this aid bubble who oversees things. Because now they can say whatever they want, they can do whatever they want. Nobody is asking them for anything. Now this is my final thing. Do you know how they audit things and how they check if things actually worked out when they're writing a report? What they do is that they give a little bit of money to the local people to write a report and go ask the people who are giving help, how do they feel about it? Then happens is the local people, because they don't want to be hired again. And that brings a moral hazard. If you want to keep writing these reports and you want to keep auditing these organizations, you will write whatever they want, because at the end of the day, the organization themselves decide who they hired to audit. The organizations themselves decide what kind of reports they want to publish, and they can do whatever they want. And this is why aid, especially in the Somali context, is an absolute and total scam. Now, my point with this video is not to say that aid is bad. I don't want to say things like aid is never needed. I don't even want to say that all money that comes to Somalia is worthless. At this moment in time, Somalia needs all the help it can get. But it's just crazy that over 30 years, these Western institutions are robbing the money that should be helping the Somali people. Now, I hope you liked this video, and if you did, please do remember to subscribe, like, share, and comment.